Aaron James Judge. Honestly, what more can be said about the absolute mutant of a man who uses his 6'7" frame to hit the ball harder than anybody else in the big leagues, and very often in the air, resulting in seasons like the one he's having this year, in which he's already blasted 51 home runs by early September, setting him up to potentially make another run at 60, which he of course did back in 2022. This is part of the reason he currently has the second highest at-bat per home run rate in the history of Major League Baseball at 11.38, trailing just Mark McGwire and ranking ahead of all-time legends like Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds, all while tallying the second best OPS plus of any active player at 172. All this is to say, he's been a ridiculously productive hitter throughout his major league career, but one thing that's stuck with him since nearly the beginning has been the belief that he's not clutch. That's why I wanted to make today's video, where I try to answer the question, is this in fact a fair judgment? Is Aaron Judge the greatest unclutch hitter of his generation, which will go down as a dubious legacy at best? Let's get into it. So, I think a good place to look here would be examining his numbers in the 3 ballgame situations as defined by Fangraphs, being low, medium, and high leverage. Now you can pretty much figure out what these mean from context. Low leverage typically occurs in game situations where there's not much on the line, medium when there's a bit more, and so on. With that being said, what are Aaron Judge's numbers in high leverage situations so far in 2024? Arguably the season people have been calling him unclutch the most in. For some context, in low leverage he's batted .343 with a .470 OBP and .760 slug. That's his best overall split, with his medium leverage numbers being a bit worse at .307, .441, .642. These situations also account for all but 3 of his home runs in the season. That solves it, right? Obviously his production hasn't been nearly as high in these high leverage situations, which means he's not clutch. Well, not so fast. Even in this season, which has admittedly seen a pretty steep drop off in terms of his performance in these situations, he's managed to post a .907 OPS, made up of a .407 OBP and slug of 500, albeit with a pretty low for him .225 average. While it might not be as good as the other 2 numbers, you can't scoff at a .907 OPS. The next point the naysayers are probably bringing up is that he hasn't hit nearly as many of his home runs in these situations. Well, try to keep in mind he's only actually had 40 total at-bats this year that have been considered high leverage. That means his 13.3% home run rate in these situations would still not only be elite, but all-time good as well, sitting just behind somebody like Barry Bonds, who was at 12.9% for his career if he stayed at that level all the time. Okay, maybe he hasn't been as bad this season, but that's probably because of a reputation that precedes him due to his performance in prior seasons. If that indeed would be your argument, it's a completely nonsensical one. In 2023, he had 4 homers and 34 at-bats in high leverage circumstances while throwing up a .294, .375, .676 slash. Unquestionably elite numbers. 2022 also saw him be incredibly productive in these situations as well, hitting 6 homers and 57 at-bats with an OPS over 1,000. In my opinion, we could stop there. The last 3 seasons are definitely the most relevant in terms of evaluating his current talent. But you know what? I really want to drive the point home, so let's look at his entire career. What are his numbers in this context? You probably could have guessed it, but they've been absolutely incredible, with a .261, .411, .528 slash, with a total of 22 homers and just 284 at-bats. Even his career numbers with runners in scoring position, another marker of clutch play, has seen him post an OPS over 1,000, with a WRC plus of 166 and 54 homers and a little over a season's worth of at-bats. So, how does this compare to other guys who've been considered clutch? Somebody like Freddie Freeman, for example. Well, Freddie has an .890 OPS for his career in high leverage situations, 50 points short of Aaron. How about his numbers with runners in scoring position? An incredible .994 OPS that's still 20 points behind Judge. I could give examples all day, but I'm only going to give one more, just for the sake of diehard Yankee fans who might find this useful as a point of reference. Do you know what Derek Jeter's career OPS was in high leverage situations? .756. With guys in scoring position, .804. I'll just leave that there. And yes, before I go, I do have to acknowledge his one real knock as a clutch performer that I can't just explain away: his performance in the postseason. He has unquestionably been worse when it matters, with just a .772 OPS in 44 career postseason games, albeit with 13 dingers. But what I will say is that narratives like these can change on a dime with just one truly elite postseason, like how it did for Alex Rodriguez back in 2009 for example. But regardless, I do hope you leave this video with a bit better of an understanding of Aaron Judge's true ability in clutch situations. After all, he's not just been great in these circumstances, he's been among the all-time best in them, like in pretty much every other area of his career. So when postseason time rolls around and he comes up to the plate in a big spot, don't just write him off immediately. He's perfectly primed to have an all-time great postseason, as he definitely has that clutch gene in him.